Welcome to the Journey to Wellness podcast, sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society and Healing Wheel Holistic. I'm Melissa Stonehill-Kyam, and I will be your host. With over 40 years' experience in the health and fitness industry, I am ready to dive in to some of the most conflicting topics we have regards to health today. Let's go. Thank you for dropping in this week. I'm with my friend and colleague, Mikaila Rae, and I'm excited about today for so many different reasons. I love the fact that spiritual connection is ageless, and people can come into their own at any given time. And I'm sitting here, I'm 60. Mikaila, you are still you're in your later 20s. 29. One more year till that dirty 30. But I love that there's this real connection. And I find that I've been making more and more connections with younger women, especially. And that really speaks to my heart because younger women are the future. And we need to carry this torch, and we need to know that whatever wisdom we collect, that we're handing off, as well as what I feel is that I'm learning too. Mm-hmm. Like I'm constantly learning. And one of the things I was thinking about before we stepped in today is that Mikaila and I met each other 2 years ago. And it was just like this. It's like two ships passing in the night. We just didn't connect. It wasn't a charge. And I thought about that today because a lot of people think that things will happen for them if they change jobs or if they leave a city and go to a new city. And I don't think that's the answer at all. I think things happen for you when you change your own vibration and your own frequency. Then people that are resonating on a similar frequency are going to come back. Mm-hmm. And then I thought one more thing. You know, have you ever bought like a really comfy sweater and now it's in your wardrobe and you put it on and you're like, how did I ever get through fall without this? Because it becomes like your favorite thing to wear. So I was thinking that today about you. It's like, how did I not have this girl in my life when we first met? Like, what? And then I just acknowledged that this timing is good. Mm-hmm. And so I've just had the fortunate experience to reconnect with you in a way that I just feel is like, and on my way over here, we were talking about what a manifester you are and the collaborations that are now in store for Medicine Music Project and Healing Wheel retreats because of you. Mm-hmm. So before I hand it off to you, I just wanted to kind of bring that forward because this makes me very excited to be here today.
Yeah.
So please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Mikaila. I love that you referred to me as the comfy sweater in your closet that you wear all fall long. So my name is Mikaila, and I'm a healer. I typically work with people through healing trauma and soul retrieval. Essentially, what I do is I create safety in the divine masculine and the divine feminine in the higher self by releasing old trauma from this lifetime and lifetimes past. So that's who I am and what I do.
So that's a mouthful.
It is a big mouthful.
It is a big mouthful, and you didn't even take a breath while you said it. I mean, so let me tell you a little bit about my experience. I had a session with Mikaila, and I think that when people go into working with a practitioner, one of the things that's very helpful for the person, as well as the practitioner, but really helpful for the person, is you have to be ready to let go. Mm-hmm. Nobody can make you let go. Like, you can have all the greatest tools in the world, and if somebody comes in and they're really super guarded, it may take a while. Mm-hmm. But in my session with Mikaila, I felt safe. I felt like I have nothing to hide. And I was ready to do the work. And when we started, there was also noise around. It wasn't quiet. And that was okay, because I'm really working past that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I went into a pretty hypnotic state. And it's funny because she's in school to become a hypnotherapist, and she did not even try to hypnotize me. But there was something in her cadence of the way she was speaking that just kind of put me there.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to a very difficult place for me. And I remember as I was talking and observing, I had like tears coming out of the corners of my eyes. And it was a very profound experience for me. And we don't need to get into details because, it's personal, but that was profound and really meaningful
Mm-hmm.
and effective.
Yeah.
So all I can say is when you say what you do, and people are like, wait, what is that? Rewind? Can you say that 5 more times? I went into it as like, this woman has been through her stuff and has come out very triumphantly and has something she wants to give. So therefore, I'm allowing myself to become vulnerable and trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who works in the wellness field, that's a hard place to get other people to be.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, when you work with somebody who has a level of, like, we all have trauma, but like maybe it's acute at the time,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way you help disarm them?
Well, so much of what I do in my human design, I'm a projector. So I have to wait for the invitation. People have to let me in. I have an aura that can be very overwhelming for people who are not ready to see into themselves. And so I have gotten really, really good at waiting for that invitation. Mm-hmm. So the people I work with, they're ready. And I've given several disclaimers ahead of time, like, this is not easy. This is not going to be anything that you think it is. I can explain it to you over and over and over what we're going to do in a session. But until you've actually experienced it, you're not going to understand exactly what I'm saying. And I let people know, like, what we're doing is we're doing really deep emotional work. And the society, the world that we live in, shuns all of that. They say, don't feel anything, man up, right? Be strong, put a brave face on.
Or take this medication.
Take the
Right.
pill, take the fast track, right? That's not what we do. We get to the root of where the emotional moment happened. So I preface that heavily, and I tell people, like, 9 times out of 10, the first session, you're most likely going to cry. Which is great, because I know that now if you're crying, we just hit a level of emotion that you haven't hit probably for a very long time, which means that now I have my path and my avenue to, like, really get to the bottom of what this is and be able to create that change. And you said something earlier about you, like, the person in a session having to be ready and willing to do this stuff. They do everything. My client is the one that's doing everything. I'm the guide. I'm not healing you. Even though I identify as a healer, I'm the guide more than anything, because you can't let go. I can't force you to let go. You have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to go all the way back to when this trauma first happened, whatever it is. And so much of what I work with are patterns that you're experiencing right now in your lifetime. But this happened when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. Right. And so this has been reoccurring your entire lifetime, not realizing that it started when you were a little child.
Yes.
And so much of what we're doing, you don't even have memory of what caused this. You just know that this has been happening your whole life.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I really loved about during the session with you is you had a very assertive voice inflection. And that works for me. I don't know if it works for everyone else, but it really worked for me. I'm enough of an empath myself, and more of that is just like mush. And I can't really do the work with that.
Yeah.
So moving, I remember being given space for things to just kind of come through. There was some short periods of silence where I can process a little bit, but then you would be like, okay, now you would ask the question over again. And it was good because it doesn't I wasn't lost in the emotion. I was just kind of like, it was like pushing me along.
Right.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Right.
So that was really, really good. Now, we have so many conditions where, like I said before, I'm a woman, I'm 60 years old, I have 4 kids, I raise them, I have grandkids. So if I say, I've got this life experience, somebody's going to say, oh yeah, of course you do. You've lived 6 decades. You know what, that's really not the way it works, because I've met peers that have not even caught on to any of their lessons, have really not a great amount of depth. And I think that a soul on fire is a soul on fire, and it doesn't matter if you're 10 or 20 or 30 or 40, 60, 80, it doesn't really matter. Yes, we see more things, and maybe we've had a level of pain, but I know that when I heard your story, I was just like, move over, people, because here's a young woman who went through traumatic situation right out of high school, and instead of taking the road that so many young people do, taking drugs or drinking or whatever, anything but the work, you did not do that. You got to a point where you were like, I got a different roadmap. Can you talk a little bit about that switch where you decided to be this warrior in your life?
Yeah. Do you want me to get a little background on what the story?
I want you to say whatever you want to say.
Okay.
This is your hour.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a fantastic childhood. Absolutely wonderful. My parents were amazing. I had no worries, no issues. I was a very trustworthy kid. Around the time I was 15 going on 16, an older man who was my little sister's soccer coach started paying attention to me and started to groom me. And he was much older than me. He was my high school soccer coach as well. And we started secretly dating when I was 17 years old. And when I was 18, a senior in high school, I got pregnant about 3 months before I was getting ready to graduate. The day of my high school graduation, my house got hit by a tornado, and we lost everything. A week after the tornado hit, I told my parents, really early in the morning, I just told them, hey, Johnny's on his way over here to pick me up, and I'm moving out. And they had no idea that I was pregnant. They had no idea I had a boyfriend. They had no idea about any of this stuff. So I had my first baby at 19. We got married a few months after she was born, had my second daughter at 21. And I was very much doing my best to be what I thought I was supposed to be. I was doing everything that I thought that I was supposed to do, not realizing that essentially I was a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. Whenever we moved to Colorado here, I had to get a job, which he didn't want, but it's really expensive to live here compared to Kansas, where we came from. And so I started working, and I absolutely loved my job. It was the first time I had community, people that understood me, people that were helpful and so generous with their time and their knowledge. And I excelled really, really, really quick at the job that I had as a personal trainer. And because I was doing so well, because I had friends, because there were people in my life that he couldn't control 24/7, every single night I went home was a fight. I got screamed at, I got yelled at, the kids were in the room hiding in their closet, things were thrown around the house. I was never physically abused, but very emotionally abused for sure. I got told every day who I was cheating on him with, and eventually that just led to me divorcing him, filing for divorce. And when that happened, when I filed for divorce, when a narcissist loses control of their victim, they do everything in their power to hurt that person. So my kids were kidnapped for 6 weeks. I had no idea where they were, where they went. They ended up getting unenrolled from their schools here in Colorado Springs, moved to a town 2 hours away from here, enrolled in school, and by the time we went to court, the judge decided that the kids were settled in their new town that they had lived in for 2 whole weeks. And so they are still living out there and going to school out there. So at that time, everything that was important to me, which, my kids and my job and the family that I had, I was leaving, and it was being taken from me. I had lost control of my kids. I didn't know where they were. Unfortunately, police couldn't help me because we didn't have any, we hadn't been to court yet to have anything in place. So they couldn't help. And so I just felt this extreme lack of control in everything that was going on around me. And in that time, I really just decided that this is the first time in my entire life, I was 25 years old, that I've had to figure out who I am. I went straight from being in my home with my parents and my sister to my own family, where my whole life I've had people looking out for me, taking care of everything, like telling me what to do, telling me where to go, where to be, and all of that stuff. And so this was the first opportunity that I had to figure out who I was and what I liked and what I wanted and what kind of people I wanted to surround myself with. And so I was either at work or I spent all of my time out in the mountains just trying to figure out who I was. And I kept thinking, like, this would be a really good time for me to, like, really lean heavily on, like, alcohol or pills or drugs or something. And I kept thinking, like, this is like what happens to people whenever their kids are kidnapped. Right? Or they get, like, really violent, or they get really angry. Right. And, like, that's why people murder people. You don't mess with somebody's kids.
Right.
And I just kept thinking, like, none of that feels right. And I could just, my whole life, my mom would always say, everything happens for a reason. She would say that all the time. And that really was just ingrained in my brain. Mm-hmm. So whenever my kids were gone and my life felt like it was just, like, crumbling around me, I just kept thinking, this is happening for a reason.
And I know you're really close to your parents, and I bet they were really traumatized as well.
They were heartbroken because they're 12 hours away from here. Mm-hmm. So as much as they wanted to, like, help me and be here for me, I moved 12 hours away from them. Mm-hmm. So they can only be, like, emotional support on the phone. And so I just kept thinking, like, man, this is what could happen, but I don't want that.
And in the middle of this, isn't that when also Willow went missing?
Yeah, my dog got lost in the woods for 10 days. And
right.
She was the only thing I had right then because my kids were gone. And yeah.
And that, thank God, Willow's back.
Willow's back.
She went every day after work and camped out and mm-hmm. waited and waited and waited. And mm-hmm. I remember that time.
Yeah.
But, what you just described that you have experienced before you were 26, mm-hmm. I mean, like, geez, so many people, like, that's hard stuff.
Yeah. That's what I kept thinking, too. Stuff. I kept thinking, like, man, if there was ever a time in my life has been so great, but if there was ever a time in my life for me to, like, get extremely depressed and suicidal, it's now. If there's ever a time in my life to be, like, so anxious that I need medications, that's time is now. And
you mentioned Stockholm Syndrome, so for those of you that don't know what that is, that's when the person falls in love with their kidnapper, basically. When you're in a situation, it happens a lot, I guess, in wartime. It came from World War II, that saying. And it's an illusion. The setup becomes mm-hmm. such an illusion, but you feel like you have a place in it somewhere. So one of the things I picked up from, your Instagram and everything else about kind of the way you handle things is that you started to lean into the darkness.
I did. Mm-hmm. I leaned into spirituality really, really heavy. I journal all the time, just trying to get the thoughts out of my head, really trying to figure out what I was feeling and trying to get a broader perspective on why this was all happening. I'm a huge believer in everything happens for a reason. So if there's a reason that my ex-husband decided to kidnap my kids, what does this do for me? Somehow, in some way, this is serving me, and I'll be damned if I don't figure out what that service is.
Right. And so it's like you don't want to suffer in vain.
Right.
You want to squeeze the juice out
right.
of it. And, as a mom, thinking about how would I feel if one of my daughters experienced this type of thing, and kind of the helplessness that comes along with that. You know, what a gift that you faced it in the depth that you did. I'm not even going to use the word maturity, because it's not about maturity. It's about connection. It's about connecting to the highest part of yourself in order to get through it.
Right.
And did you experience any physical pain during this time?
No, not really, because I was either working or I was in the mountains. And the mountains are just, you know, trees, sun, water. It's so healing.
How did you sleep? How did you get yourself to sleep at night?
I joke about this, but there's so much truth to it. In one of my past lives, I had to have mastered the art of trust. And so the art of trust just, it keeps me safe at all times, because no matter what's happening, I know that it's in my benefit.
So would this be universal trust? What type of trust?
Just a trust in what's happening, knowing that everything that's happening to me is not happening to me, it's for me. I don't know the bigger picture, but I know that my angels are going to get me there. You know, I know that my connection to my higher self is going to lead me in the right direction. I know if something is coming to cause me harm, I'm going to be steered in the other direction.
Now, when you were growing up, were your parents, did they raise you guys with a higher connection? Did you come upon this yourself?
I definitely came upon it myself, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that, because I just know, like, my own upbringing, and amidst some of the chaos, I had to find just solace. And nature in general is a really great way to find yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. And just being alone. People are so afraid to be alone, and I needed it. Because I had always been told what to do by other people. Not my parents. My parents were parents, right? And I was a kid, so I had to be places at certain times. I played sports, so that's them telling me what to do. But my ex-husband, definitely. I wasn't allowed to have friends, wasn't allowed to talk to my family, wasn't allowed to have fun, I couldn't go to the grocery store by myself. We had one car that I could never take by myself.
So it made sense, almost in a way, his pattern of kidnapping the kids, because he basically kidnapped you. And when you mention grooming, so I understand this because my own personal story, but I don't think a lot of people know what that means. And one of the biggest mistakes I think that is made is that when young children are told to have a level of trust for a family friend, or, trust has to be earned. Right. And if we blindly trust, and I'm not putting people down like teachers and this and that, but like that trust has to be earned. Because if we walk out and we aren't a little bit guarded, especially as women, then things can happen. So with you, can you please explain what grooming is for people that are listening, so grooming, they know what to look out for?
Yeah. So grooming is it's a technique that like a sexual predator uses to make their target, which in this situation was me, feel comfortable around them, feel safe around them, start to trust them, start to ignore what their inner voice is saying, like this person isn't good, this isn't right, like I shouldn't be involved in this. They create a level of safety where they become the person that you go to, and then they take advantage of the trust that they've built.
And what was the age difference?
8 years. But, he was my high school soccer coach. So
it's totally inappropriate. There's nothing appropriate about this,
Right.
And you were 8 years, the 8 years difference, if you're 30 and 38, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But when you're 17 and the 8 years difference is a big deal.
Right.
You're a minor, you're in your parents' home, you haven't lived your life, and it's unacceptable.
Right.
So the grooming is, being that, hey, you can talk to me about anything, I'm here for you kind of situation. So that's always something, it's a fine line there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all of that, so this is a young woman who's been through a hell of a lot, okay? Just graduating high school, being pregnant, it's like, if you wanted to play soccer in college, like that wasn't going to be an option anymore. And I know you still are an amazing athlete and are on a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're healing that part of yourself by being on Rob Decker's softball league,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're playing in the
I play
volleyball league,
yep.
and that field sports and stuff like that, because that's so you. And I met your daughters, and they're fabulous. They're just great little people.
Yeah, they're very special.
And they're very proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
When you played softball, they told me all about how they cheered for you and where you stood, and play by play, they watch you like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So you have chosen a very unique lifestyle as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful. Do you want to talk about that at all?
About the way I live?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the beginning of June, I moved into a camper to be able to have that kind of like location freedom. It's been about 2 years now that I quit my corporate job after trying to go back after furlough from COVID. It didn't work out for me, and so I just run my own business, and I kind of separate from the traditional societal roles as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the choice that you made. She carries her house with her,
Mm-hmm.
and she has this beautiful chocolate lab, and her daughters, when they're with you, they're just like living the life. They think this is so much fun.
They love it so much.
Yeah, they do. And you make it work.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at their life and look at all the things that don't work. And then they lean into all the things that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere amidst this just darkness, you sparked your own light. It's almost like, I imagine you're sitting in this dark room and you light a candle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unbelievable that you have the strength of character to do what you've done. And it just blows me away. In the time that I worked with you, I knew you were going through some struggles.
Yeah.
But you showed up for work.
Yeah.
And you had this work ethic.
I had to prove it to myself
And
that everything he said was wrong.
Wait a minute. You know how many people would be like, hey, I'm not coming in today.
Mm-hmm.
All hell is broken loose and I can't be there. But not you.
Mm-mm.
You were like, I'm doing this. And that's amazing. So with all that strength of character, knowing your story, knowing how you showed up for yourself, when it came time for me to have a session with you, I was completely disarmed.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely walked into there with complete trust of like, people that have gone through this kind of crap in their life and felt the pain, felt the trauma, and then find joy, and then want to help others find joy.
Yeah.
They're genuine.
Yeah. Can I add something there?
Yeah.
So once I started getting into the work that I do, like with the Akashic Records and Somatic Therapy and Past Life Regression and all that kind of stuff, I had realized that I was still carrying a lot of guilt around myself for still, even though I was too young, I know the situation, I know that I was groomed, I know that I was a victim here. I still had a level of shame around the fact that I still at that time allowed these things to happen, that I still fell for it, that I was tricked, that I became the victim. I still carried a lot of shame and guilt around that. And I went into the Akashic Records at one point, which is where you go, you can find the causes of pains and traumas in past lifetimes. So I went into the Akashic Records to ask specifically, like, why him? Why did I allow this? Why did this happen? Like, what's the story here? Because I believe in the purpose.
Okay.
And in my last lifetime, I died really, really young. And I died because I was raped. I became pregnant and I died in childbirth. My child died with me in childbirth. So at that point in the death, there was no opportunity in that last lifetime to heal the trauma of being sexually abused and then dying from it. So then in this lifetime, my soul decided that it was safer to choose that abuser in order to heal that from the last lifetime. So that took away all the shame, that took away all the like it gave me all of the understanding and the awareness. It helped me really understand, like, okay, as terrible as he was, he played a really big role in me being able to overcome all of this, like the very next lifetime. Like, I'm not dealing with this over and over and over and over and over again. My soul, it's done.
So a few things come to mind when you share this.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you will have to explain the Akashic Records, because so many people, that's a new word, right? So I'll have you dive into that because I think it's really important. The other thing is, you're not saying acceptance. You're not saying, like, if you're a victim of rape, or if you're a victim of sexual abuse or trauma, or any kind of harassment or anything against your will, she's not saying, oh, just accept it. Mm-mm. She's not saying accept it and move on. She's saying dive into it, dig into it, learn from it, question it. Why? What's going on? And come to a place of learning the why. Therefore, you can move forward with acceptance. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So I had a situation when I was 16 where I was taken advantage of in a very bad way from a family friend over a period of days. I was drugged. And I couldn't come to learning acceptance or anything until I was 40.
Yeah.
So from the ages of 16 to 40, I had lots of trauma, organ trauma, all kinds of things, because I wouldn't talk about it. And when I came to finally, I didn't learn 100% of where it came from yet. But what I did squeeze out of it eventually was when I was in my 50s, all of a sudden, people were coming out of the woodwork to me as clients with PCOS and endometriosis, adenomyosis, all kinds of uterine issues, sexual trauma. And then finally, it was, aha, I know how to help them. And therefore, I went through this, so now I can help them, you know? And that was my way of looking at it. And then I was like, hey, guys, entities, angels, everybody up there, you don't need to put me through it in order for me to help other people. Like, I get it. I don't have to experience it now to help someone else. I don't want it anymore like that. You know?
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So, but it took me forever. And you have clarity at 29. And that's not to say that things aren't going to cross your path.
Right.
Where you're going to be like, wow, we're here again. Like, I got to deal with this. Now what? Right? Because this happens. But to have clarity as a young woman, what a gift. And now you're able to give others clarity?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is unique. And people that I have met that are quite evolved in the field of healing and helping others, generations older than you, they speak your name. You know, they're talking about you. It's like you're gaining so much momentum, and I feel like you could definitely be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, and you also are very supportive. You know, I'll say, Mikaila is now assisting us at Healing Wheel retreats, and I'll say, hey, I need to do this, and this many people on this day, and she'll text me back, well, that's already happening. You know, that's already being done. That'll be done. You've got that. And I was like, wow, what a great thing to say. And every time I have a conversation with you, you're like a thumbs up all the time. Two thumbs up, girl.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, because there's also the flip side. There's wherever there's light, there's darkness. And it can't always be like everybody's thumbs up, great, like shit happens.
Right.
So how do you recognize that? Like, what happens to you? Do you have a physical sensation when you know, like, this isn't a good person to work with, or this isn't, to talk about the flip side of the light?
Yeah. So if it's a hard no, if somebody's energy isn't available for it, or if the energy is just saying like this isn't the right direction to go in, I have a lot of clairognoscence and a lot of clairtangency, which means that my intuition speaks to me. I either just know that I know that I know, and there's no questioning it. The seed is planted and it's there. Or I can feel it. I'm very clairtangent, which means that my intuition also talks to me like physically. Not usually in painful ways, but most of the time I hear my intuition through goosebumps. And based on where the goosebumps are showing up on my body, I know if this is good or bad, or if they're like pulsating, then that means something different. You know, if it's in the back of my neck, it means something different than if it's like a whole body chills. And so yeah, of course. But also if I'm actually working with somebody and it's something negative, it's more of a question of like, why are you unwilling to go here? You know, like we're here to get through this, and if you're trying to block this, we can't.
Right.
We're not going to get anywhere.
Right. And that's good. So you're very strong in your position.
Yeah.
And
That's what people come to me for. They come to me to be the one that can hold space, the one that has absolutely zero judgment. I can love you for where you are, where you've been, where you're going, where you want to go, how difficult it is to get there. I can love you through all of that. I'm here to hold space, and I'm here whenever you hit that roadblock to say, hold on, we got one more step, you know?
And you fill yourself up through nature, is that correct? For
sure. Yeah, nature, the sun, meditation, sound baths. Like, you know, I go get my own services done. I love whenever people do Reiki sessions with me. I'm constantly filling up my own cup, but I know what I need. I know that in human design, I'm a projector, so my energy drains quick. I can feed off of other people all day long, but I have to sleep. I have to rest. I can't say yes to anything that I don't feel like a whole body yes to, otherwise I'm zapped.
Right. I think that's so good to recognize because, you know, we have kind of empathy burnout and, you know, I never see it coming. So I was just like Energizer Bunny. I'm doing this, I'm that. I got 6 plates flying until all of a sudden they all come crashing down. And then I'm like on the couch. And usually it's in the form of a migraine because the universe is just like, whew,
right?
You know, down girl. And then when I get back up, I'm back at it again because I was like, oh, well, I missed this. This is. And so when I reconnected with you, I felt like, oh my gosh, she's exactly what I need. Because I need someone to be like, hey, I got this. Or, hey, Melissa, stop. Just slow down. Or let it go. Or those kind of things. And when we reconnected and I had this feeling about like a place for you and what my vision was, and then, you know, talking to my team and then I presented it to you and you had a beautiful response. Like it really was emotional for me to see how you responded. Wasn't that a great moment?
Of course.
It was really magical.
It was the manifestation coming into reality.
Yeah. And then since we've been reconnected, you know, you brought John into our lives and we're making great music. Not the same John you mentioned. It's John Thunderheart Robinson. And he's going to do a podcast with us. But, you know, we're making music together. We're working on what kind of offering we can present here in Colorado Springs and hopefully branch out more. But what you're a real catalyst in that. You know, you may see yourself as projector, but you're also phenomenal designer and manifester yourself. Because you know how to take these pieces on the board and put them together and be like, oh, this one will work great with this one, and this one, should be here, and then you bring people into the mix
Right.
that are just such embellishments
Right.
of the vision that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're incredibly gifted, really gifted. And I know that as your journey continues on, you're just going to hone all those skills. And the more people that I can get in front of you, I know the better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to start out, it's always, always start with the people around you that are the closest. So your house, whatever that house means to you. If it's your biological family or your soul brothers and sisters, you start there. And then you start to move out into your community,
Mm-hmm.
and into your city, and then into your state, and then into your country, your continent,
Mm-hmm.
then the next continent. Because this is how we have to do it. It's like throwing a pebble in the water and seeing it ripple out.
Right.
So I'm just blessed to have you along in my personal journey, and hope that I can be an enhancement to your personal journey, along with the team that I work with,
Yeah.
of extraordinary people. Can you talk a little bit about, we mentioned the Akashic Records, and I also want you to talk about what a session with you looks like.
Yeah. So the Akashic Records is the records of your soul since it was crystallized into reality. So every single lifetime that you've ever lived, every experience you've ever had is in your records. And whenever I go into your Akashic Records, I'm in your soul's history. I'm speaking to your guides, your teachers, your masters, and your loved ones. And so whatever questions you have, they can give the answers to it. If something from a past lifetime needs to be healed, they'll tell you exactly what you need to do in order to heal it. The majority of the time it's just awareness that's needed, but they'll give the answers to all of that. So it's probably my favorite modality to use too, because it's a conversation just like you and I are having, except they're here as well. And then I'm just translating. So like you can talk to them, you can ask them questions, you can ask for more clarity, more details, names, eras, like what year this happened, what continent you were on, if you were on Earth, and they'll just give the answers.
And a lot of people may be wondering, well, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you connect with, entities that aren't physically in the realm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all, I attribute a lot of it to my alignment. I'm very aligned to my higher self. So messages come in, they come in really easy. And then there is an opening prayer to go into the Akashic Records, but it's really just being a channel, just being open, just allowing the messages to come to and share. And no matter how weird or ridiculous what you're hearing sounds, just say it out loud, because it doesn't make sense to you because you didn't live that, but the person is going to know exactly what you're talking about, right? One time I was in the Akashic Records and I was like, I keep smelling leather. And I was like, your grandpa's here. Why do I smell leather? And he's like, oh, he was a cowboy back in Mexico, like, long time ago. And he always wore his leather chaps and a leather cowboy hat. And he's like, that's how I knew him, was by the smell of leather. Like, didn't make any sense to me.
I think developing the clairs in general, like, it's accessible to everybody.
Everybody has them.
Yes.
Society has talked you out of believing that what you know is what you know.
Right. There's a lot of conditioning that we
right.
talked about.
And they make everything sound so weird and so, like,
and intangible.
Right. And so people don't talk about what they're experiencing. But as soon as we start talking about it, everybody's like, oh my gosh, I had a dream about that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I think about the history, there was a reason that they burned witches, and one of them is because there was truth, and there was a fear. We can't control the people when we have these people that can tell the truth.
Right.
And sorcery and everything and all, biblical texts and everything, you need to avoid this. Well, there wouldn't be a need to avoid something if it wasn't a thing. If it was nonsense, it wouldn't say anywhere to avoid this. Thou shalt not murder. Why would it say that? Because there was a desire to murder. So engaging in sorcery and tarot and astrology was frowned down upon because it's a thing. And that is something to think about.
Right.
And why are people still today afraid? Because my opinion is opinion. It's not a fact.
Mm-hmm.
It's just my opinion. So my point of view of why people are still afraid, we have so many layers of conditioning.
Mm.
Oh, this is a good thought. This is a bad thought.
Right.
This is right. This is wrong.
Right. People are going to judge me.
You know, is it your right? Is it your wrong? Or did someone tell you it was right or wrong? And when you have these downloads and messages and connections to angels or other entities in a realm, it should be definitely observed and not dismissed. And it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever had, is being able to go into an intuitive nutrition Reiki session and being able to really open up and call in the angels, and I can feel who's with me and who's not. And the ones that are with me, I know, like, why I can, okay, so this one's there. Let's figure out where we're going here. But the clairs, so in development of clairs, that is the senses that are beyond what is just your, your sense of smell and your sense of taste. Go the next layer, because there's a clair of a sense of smell, like you were smelling leather, and taste and vision and hearing and feeling, right? So when you were talking about working on yourself daily and being in nature, that's one of the best ways to develop your clairs, is being in that vibration of the earth and the trees and the wind and the sky.
That and unlearning everything that you've been told.
Yeah, well, that's probably the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Unlearning everything that you've ever been told. And you know that more than anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And you preface this not about your parents. You love your parents,
Yes.
what they told you, go to bed and this and that. That
Right.
was just superficial, take care of child stuff. But unlearning everything you've been told.
Right.
And that is a strong message and a fearful message for so many people. What? And then I have to do what? I have to define myself? That's scary. I have to take responsibility, right? And she's saying, yeah, unlearn everything you've been told, like she had to do, to find out. Even you mentioned to me, you didn't even know what flavor ice cream you liked, or whatever.
Right.
You know? It was just, wait a minute, what is it that I love?
Exactly.
So, real quick, it's not a quick thing, but in a nutshell, what are the Akashic Records?
What are they?
Yeah, specifically.
Yeah.
Like, where did this come about? Where did this, is it, was there someone that you can say brought it to the public? Like, where did it come from?
I don't know where it came from, to be honest. It's just one of those modalities that have been around for a very, very, very long time, like Qigong, like meditation. It's been around forever. It just got suppressed, like you said, because it was challenging the patriarchy and the church and their agendas, so it got suppressed. I don't know where it originated from. What it is it's just the soul. It's the record of your soul since it was created. So
it's like a soul journey, almost like an energetic signature.
Yeah. And it some people believe in like the karmic life. Like everything that you experience in this lifetime is a form of karma, whether it's good or it's bad, but it is giving you the lesson that you need. I believe that every lifetime that you live gets you closer and closer and closer to that ultimate sense of oneness, where our souls go back to that sense of oneness. And so every lifetime we have these lessons that either we missed in the last lifetime or we completely screwed up. So now things are different in this lifetime. But the Akashic Records, it has the answers to everything.
And I think that people usually see patterns in their life.
Yeah.
Like things they just can't get right, and they just keep happening over and over, like somebody who can't hold a job.
Right. Or keep having the same terrible boyfriend over and
Yeah.
over. Different person,
Right.
same situation.
And they don't see that the common denominator in that is the self.
Right. Right.
So where some folks want to be like, play victim, I just had the meanest boss, and I got fired, and then I went to this job, and oh my God, then they had the worst boss, and then finally it's like, but you were there every time. You were in that scene.
Right.
So maybe you got to look at yourself.
Right.
And try and fix that.
Right. And if it's always an issue of the boss is ... as a child, where did this begin? And it probably came down to a situation where somebody in authority said something or did something that you didn't like, and now for the pattern repeating is that you just have an issue with people of authority.
And that's scientifically evidenced as well in psychology, and in a lot in psychiatry too, because going back to the formative years, up to 7 really, like maybe 10, but things that happen there, especially with young women, like I've mentioned this before. So let's say something simple where you may not think of it much, but like a young girl, she's not taught much about menstruation. Maybe she's an early bloomer and she has her menstrual cycle in class. That's so horrifying, okay? Now there's a lot of shame, a lot of trauma about herself and her body. So we start body trauma right there, because there was no preparation for this. And now she goes forward in life with this sense of body trauma, embarrassment, this, and that. Maybe have painful periods, and there's issues around the cycle.
Right.
Well, that happens quite a bit, Another thing could be a child draws a picture. Clearly, it's a rocket to the child, and the child shows it to an adult, and the adult says, "What is that?" "Oh, it's a rocket." "It doesn't look like a rocket. I thought it was a kite," And then right there and then, that child decides they can't draw.
Right.
They can't express themselves. Right. So I'm talking about just little stuff that we don't think about as parents. Or especially with boys, your little boy falls down, scrapes his knee, it's bleeding, and you say, "You're okay, be a big boy." Clearly he's not okay. His knee is bleeding and it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then we're teaching our boys not to feel. And this, what I'm just saying, is like these stops along the way.
Right.
Tell people what it's like to work with you. Tell them what's it like. You're going to work with Mikaila because you heard this, and she's this extraordinary woman, and you want to get over a certain trauma. And I just told you, I'm 60. She knocked me off my feet. And really, I had tears, and I was like, whoa, she took me there, really? And I can't wait till the next session, because I know what it's like to peel an onion. Once is not enough. You got a few layers there. So tell them what it's like to work with you. What are they going to expect?
Well, yeah. That's a difficult question to answer most of the time, because every situation is so different, because your trauma is not the same as mine, is not the same as hers, is not the same as your neighbor's. But really what we're going to do is you get center stage to begin with. You're going to tell me what's going on, what it is that you're looking to work through, what the patterns are that you're wanting to release. If you have any details, whatever that is, that's what you let me know while you have the stage. And then once it's my turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap into your energy, and we're going to go wherever that energy takes us. And so as you're talking, I can hear whether or not what is happening originated in this lifetime or in a last lifetime, which tells me, are we doing childhood reintegration, or are we doing the Akashic Records, or are we doing somatic therapy, which is just releasing trapped emotions from your body.
Is that what you use the magnets for?
The magnets are for somatic therapy,
Okay.
yeah. It pulls the pain out of your physical body.
I need to do a session with you on that.
Yeah. So there's so many different modalities. It just, wherever the energy is taking us is where we're going to follow. What does it look like to work with me? I mean, first of all, you have to be ready. You have to be willing, right? I've had very, very few, but I have had clients before come really wanting to make change and like heal these things, but still refusing it. You know, it's like when I was a personal trainer, like you can't just pay the trainer and all of a sudden you have your results. Like you have to do the work. You have to be willing inside and outside of personal training sessions. They have to be doing what they're supposed to be doing if they want to get to that end goal. Like with me, just showing up for a session and letting me do my stuff is not enough. You have to be willing to actually let go, which is a really scary thing for a lot of people, because once you let go, everything changes. It changes for the better, but people are afraid of change.
And I think you made a good analogy there with personal training, because it's not like you're going to hire a personal trainer, go to the gym, do a bicep workout, and then you're walking out of the gym and you got like biceps.
Right.
That doesn't happen. It's going to take some time. And on a physical level, people are ready. Oh, I need to go back and I need to do this 3 times a week because I want to get a result. Yeah. On the emotional level, they want to be one and done, but that doesn't work either. And when you work with people that really want to help you get through stuff, you got to keep coming.
Right.
You got to keep coming. And we can't say it's going to take 3 sessions, 4 sessions, but we don't know.
Right.
We don't know at all.
I don't know how many times you've been abandoned, you know, but we have to release each one of those.
Right. So it's really important to work consistently. So how do people find you?
I have a website, and
Okay,
it's
tell 'em
called
what it is.
it's called soulchargehealing.com. I am on Instagram a lot, and I am making a name on TikTok. All of my handles across the board are just Mikaila.Rae, Raee. Yeah.
And you respond pretty quickly.
Yeah. On Instagram for sure. My website is just my website, but like if you need time to chat, if you want to like dive into like what you actually need and where I can fit into that puzzle, just DM me on Instagram because I'm on there.
And are you doing distance healing too?
Oh yeah, lots and lots of distance. I have
Okay.
clients in Canada and Mexico and Australia and the UK and yeah.
So that's wonderful. And her company name is Soul Charged, and that's Mikaila Rae, and it's Mikaila.Rae, Raee, on Instagram, and all of that will be in the podcast notes. And today we are podcasting from the Center for Essential Wellness, which you helped paint the stairs turquoise.
Yes.
And they're really pretty. Here in Colorado Springs. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society, www.essentialwellnesssociety.com, and Healing Wheel Holistic, www.healingwheelholistic.com. We have an amazing retreat coming up here in Manitou Springs, July 28th through August 1st. It is next level. I have gathered literally the best practitioners around, and we are just going to love on people and just help them in every which way we can. Thank you so much for tuning in today.